What did you ask people to do for you?
If you give people something very specific to do for you, it makes it easier for them. People want to help you. This is what I've discovered more and more since I got the diagnosis. People want to help you desperately. And they're always saying, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? Well, I started to think of things that needed to be done. And I started to actually write down, I need this done. I'll ask so-and-so. I need this done. I'll ask someone else. And it was a great discovery. It was fabulous for me, and it was fabulous for the people that wanted to help me. They had concrete things they could do for me. I called up my sister in California, my youngest sister, Jill, who is wonderful in many areas, but she's always been very good at making musical tapes. And I asked her, I said, Jill, would you make me some cassettes of music that could be related to getting some kind of sickness, or having some kind of adversity, or having some kind of troubles, maybe some spirituality involved. Could you make me some musical tapes that would be fitting for this situation? Because I knew I was going to be spending some time alone. I was going to be meditating. I was going to be sitting listening to nice music. And she did. She was thrilled to be able to do that for me.
Speaking of your family, what was the family meeting you told me about?
The family meeting was an interesting thing. The first thing that happened out of that, as soon as I found out there was going to be a family meeting, I realized that I was going to have to educate myself. I didn't even know what questions to ask. I was diagnosed on a Tuesday with bladder cancer, and I had a family meeting scheduled for Thursday morning. And I immediately started to think, well, I need questions. What do I even ask? I had no clue. So I can remember on that Wednesday, I went to the bookstore, and I called up the bookstore, and I said, I had a couple of titles. My sister had given me some titles to look for on cancer. And I called up the bookstore, and I said, do you have these titles on cancer? And they said, well, not only do we have those titles, but we have an entire section on cancer. It turns out I went to the bookstore, and there was a section there, probably 50, maybe 60 books on cancer. I was amazed at that. Of course, I never needed to know that before, so why would I know? So anyway, I got some books on cancer. I found one that had a section specifically dealing with bladder cancer, and I began to educate myself.
So you wrote the questions down. Why?
Someone gave me this as a tip, and I found it to be invaluable. As a patient, or even as a family member, there's so much emotion involved in this whole atmosphere. I mean, you're talking about cancer. It brings up to mind so many things that to try to ask questions without getting emotionally involved is almost impossible. The other thing that for most people that happens is you can easily ask these questions, and you want to ask all these questions, and you're very aggressive when you're home. And you're very aggressive when you're with your family members and people that love you. But something happens when you're in a hospital, you're in the doctor's office, it's that doctor-hospital atmosphere, and suddenly you don't feel as though you're in charge as much. And I wanted to have the questions in front of me, and I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to ask these no matter what. And no matter how stupid they may seem, I'm going to ask the doctor these questions. And so no matter how the doctor is, when you're sitting there with these questions in front of you on a piece of paper, you commit to the questions, you force yourself to ask the questions, and having them on paper right in front of you, you can just read them. And it allows you to be less emotional, I think. And it also, I had intended for my family members to ask the questions for me, because I thought I would be too emotional. But once the day came, and once we were there, and I had the questions in front of me, because they were there in front of me on paper, I was able to do it myself.